so I don't have a ton of experience driving back from Darlington back to Alabama.
Well, the good news is you get to stay on the same road all the way home.
Yeah, pretty much. Straight shot to Birmingham.
For better or worse, right? Well, cool.
When you guys get a second, send a Twitter link so I can share it.
Oh, yeah, I think I just did.
It looks like it just popped up on my phone. Yeah, so that's cool. Obviously, we're going to have, we got a nice little slate of notes to talk about, including the 2 Cup races and then this afternoon's race, which was obviously rather entertaining, as was last night. So that's going to be fun to talk about.
Sherman, take your camera and turn it sideways. If you can.
Sideways?
Yeah, much better.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep. Perfect.
Good thing I'm less fat now. All right. Well, when I'm on the phone, I tend to wander around. So it might get dark. It might get light. You never know what's going to happen around here.
Oh, man. Okay. So let's see. I think we're all set up here. Weaver, you know how we do this thing, so I ain't even going to go over the show notes or nothing. Other than I will disappear probably for 90 seconds for both of y'all, and then we'll bring it back on since we're all remotely trying to figure this thing out. You good to go?
Yep.
All right, Sherwin, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do this. All right, we are recording now. Did you see?
Charlotte, it's a normal way on NASCAR.
Welcome, y'all! This is the Pregame Engineer Tug Air Racing Podcast, episode number 244. It's Thursday, May 21st, 2020. I'm Tug Air Rusty Wallace, all alone in the PTM Podcast Studios. We go rolling into quarantine week number 10, but it's not quarantine for NASCAR. We're starting up racing once again, ready to talk to y'all about all the weekend stuff. Before we do, y'all know what the deal is. This podcast is sponsored by you. That's right. You go to patreon.com/PTM. Join the What You Drink Club for as little as $1 a month to get that free koozie and some stickers. Best part is, every cent this year, we are donating to sponsoring drivers. So join the PTM Posse today. Be a part of the sport you love. This week's show, as always, brought to you by our official sponsors at that $5 and up per month level. Here we go. Aaron Bearden, Robert Keblinger, Colin McLean, Eric Kevin, Ryan Keeper, Patrick Cleary, Jeff Brown, Brendan Crowd, Kathleen McDonald, Stacey Wright, Brendan Carl, Rita Porter, Jump Bob, Les Miller, Julie Bosley, John Pearson, Eddie Greer, Third Younger Motorsports, David Mullins, Patrick Johnson, Brett Morris, Crystal Smoke, Fred Rosato, Chad Knapp, Stacey Coleman, Lisa Chanana, Rick Houston, Sarah and Barry, Evan Roller, and Brad Harrison. Woo! Got one down. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have some fun tonight. Bringing on to the show, of course, y'all know him, co-host of the BTM Podcast. What's up, Sherman?
I can't help but laugh because, like, when you get towards the end of that read, whatever weird glitch there is with Skype is it starts to blip a little bit of what you're saying. Like it blips like every 2 seconds, maybe. I don't know. It's fun. It makes me laugh.
So you get to hear some amount of me yelling and screaming and acting a fool. Just try to have some fun while we're doing all this stuff. Y'all, we want to go ahead and bring on to the show longtime PTM PhD holder. He's on the road right now taking our call, associate motorsports editor for Auto Week and Auto Week Racing on Twitter at Matt Weaver AW. It's Matt Weaver. What's up, Weaver?
I'm still trying to dry out. I've seen a lot of rain. I am drenched. I am hungry. I am thrilled. I am ecstatic to be back to talking racing, to have seen a race. I feel a lot of things. Like, I feel a lot. That's all I can say. I feel.
You feel. I love it. He's hungry. He's wet. He's excited to be on the PTM podcast. I can't believe he decided to join it. You know, if I were soaking wet and hungry, I'd tell a couple of dopes, you know, it's going to be a few minutes, fellas. But appreciate you coming on, hanging out with us. And it's good to talk to people, too, while we're sitting here doing all this thing. Matt, you know how we start this thing. What are you drinking on as you're driving down the road there?
So let me tell you, I knew this was coming, of course. This is not my first rodeo. And I was hoping to have I was hoping to have something for you. Like I wanted it to either be cliche, which is like a Pepsi, or maybe I can get a little pretentious and give you a 19 syllable coffee that I'm prone to drink when I'm on the air with you. Hell, right now I would love for it to be my beloved Cinnamon Coke. But the honest to God truth is I got nothing. I have depleted my bottle of water, so this might be terrible radio in about 15 minutes once I, deplete my reserves, as it were. I got nothing. I'm drinking nothing. I am just winging it.
There you go. He's hungry, he's thirsty, he's soaking wet, and he's hanging out with us, but he's satiated when it comes to racing. So, Matt, we all know you're driving back from Darlington right now, all the way back home to Alabama. It has been, anybody who has been a part of this whole ordeal, getting back to racing, it's had to have been a hell of a week. Give us your hot take on how the week has gone for you.
To even boil it down into a hot take, I think would be a little disingenuous, just because it's so hard to boil it into one kind of thought process, because there was so much. And I've thought about this throughout the week, because God knows I've had tons of time to think. So I've been sitting there, and to me, I now know what it means when people say that's like watching paint dry. I know what that means, literally. Because for 3 days straight, I got here on Monday night, and so I first got to the racetrack on Tuesday. It's raining. I've seen them dry the track with the Air Titans, and I saw it rain again. I saw them go back after it, dry the track, and it rains again. We did that on Wednesday, and we finally got a cup race in. I get to the track on Thursday for the rained-out, rescheduled Xfinity race, and it's raining again. And I saw them dry it out, and I saw it rain again, and I saw them dry it out one more time. But that's not what I want to talk about. We saw our lives, and this is the one. If there was one answer to give you, we saw our lives kind of return a little bit to normal. It started on Sunday. We watched the race. For me personally, selfishly, I had that moment where things are back to normal. I'm getting press conference transcripts. I'm doing a teleconference press conference. I'm writing stories. I'm offering my real hot takes on Twitter. I'm bitching about the rules package. Things are normal. And then finally, I'm able to drive down the road on Monday. That's normal. Road trip. I did the World of Outlaws a couple of weeks ago. That was somewhat normal. But now I'm going to a NASCAR race, stock car racing. And I get to the racetrack, watching the track dry. I did that at Daytona too. Things just feel like normal. And that's the thing is, we can talk about the racing. We can talk about Chase Briscoe winning today. We can talk about Denny Hamlin winning. We can talk about that weird mask, whatever was on Denny Hamlin's face. We got lots of racing stuff to talk about. But it's so nice just to be talking about real-life racing, not pixels, not simulators, not rigs, not iRacing. We're talking about the real deal, and I love all that stuff. I love all of it. But it's just so cool that we can finally talk about lap leaders, lucky dogs, green flags, checkered flags, trophies, who's in the chase, who's not in the chase, the playoffs. We can talk about middle fingers, fisticuffs that would have happened in any other scenario. It's good to talk about honest-to-God, real-life racing. That's the takeaway.
Well, I think you went all the way down through the show sheet. It's been great seeing y'all. This has been the PETM podcast.
No kidding.
No, that's great. It's funny. This return to normal. It really feels like, in a way, the return to racing after the offseason. We were talking in the pre-show. I said, I wish I had calculated how many days it was and compare that to the offseason. And, Matt, you had done that, right?
Yeah. I think that this was actually 1 week longer than our actual offseason. So we basically had an offseason. We had a month of racing, and then it's back to the offseason.
That's crazy to think. And, it flies when you're sitting here at home doing nothing. During the regular off season, we got Thanksgiving, we got Christmas, we got New Year's, all the stuff, and then it's kind of leading up into Speed Week. So you kind of see the horizon on it. This has just been like, okay, well, I guess we forget about racing for a while, and then now it's back, and it was crazy. What was it?
Here's the thing. I don't actually have an off season. I know you guys know that. Mm-hmm. So I've never had to experience what it's like when, the one thing that you guys care the most about isn't there, because you guys know I've got the Snowball Derby in early December. You get to January, it's Chili Bowl. I go to CRA Speed Fest in Cordele, Georgia. I got lots of stuff going on. There's all kinds of races during the off season. I've never had to experience where it's like 2 months of having nothing to do. And I know we all had that, right? I mean, I'm not going to ask for any sort of like pity party or, whatever. Like we all went through it. It sucked for all of us. But I especially felt it just on a selfish level because I've never had to deal with that. I always have something to do, something to work on, some race to see, and to not have that for 2 months. Oh my God, y'all, that sucks.
Yeah. Walk us through what it was like at the track. What's the vibe there and challenges and restrictions and that sort of stuff?
Okay. So here's the deal. I was lucky enough in terms of the process and procedure that I had kind of gone through it before because I did go to the World of Outlaws return to racing, the Knoxville Invitational the week before.
Yep.
And I wrote a story on Auto Week, cheap plug, that the World of Outlaws and NASCAR actually, they worked hand in hand. They coordinated on their respective coronavirus health policies. And so when I went to Knoxville and then I went to Darlington, it was pretty much the same process and procedure. And I wouldn't be surprised to see very similar procedures pop up in other sports and motorsports too. You roll up to the track. The one difference from Knoxville and Darlington is I actually had to get out of my rental car for Darlington, and you had to go into the shed to do all of the stuff. But with NASCAR, you get a text message from NASCAR operations 24 hours before the race you're going to go to, both days, Tuesday and Wednesday. And you fill out the questionnaire. It's the basic questions. Anyone who has any sort of travel for their jobs, we're all doing these sort of things. Where it asks you, have you been exposed to anyone who is symptomatic? Do you have a fever, runny nose, coughs, all that stuff? So you submit that digitally. You get to the track, they take your temperature. Mine was 70, I'd be dead. It was 90.7 the first day, and then it was 97.5 the next day, and today it was 97.4 or something. Anyway, it was within the safe range. I wasn't dead, nor was I dying. That's the key thing. But they take your temperature. They ask you all the questions you submitted over the past 24 hours. Is that still current? Any symptoms? Yes, it's current. No, no change. And then they approve you. It was actually funny. The first time they went to go check my temperature, they needed to check it again. They checked my forehead, and I was like, "Is it okay? Like, is it running hot?" And he's like, "No, actually, we got 94. Like, you should be dead." So I'm like, "Well, let's try that again." Yeah. So they checked it behind my ear, and it was fine. What happened was they had the AC on. It was hot as hell in South Carolina. Or it was the first day. Then it cooled off after the rain. The first day was hot, so I turned on the AC. My forehead was super cold because I had the AC blasting on it. So it was showing me as actually, succumbing to rigor mortis. So they checked it again. I'm good. They let me in. And then, you notice the track. The infield is quiet. There's no music. There's no DJ. The grandstands are empty. There's no sponsorship activation tents. There's no fans. It's just quiet. It's silent. You go in the press box. It was just a handful of reporters. NASCAR's only allowing 4 in the track at a time. So it was some combination of myself, Jim Utter from Motorsport both days, Jerry Jordan from Kicking the Tires was there, and a local reporter from the Darlington area newspapers is represented as well. And there's no practice, no qualifying. These are one-day shows, and there's just there is no atmosphere. You ask about the atmosphere, Guys are just working. Guys are working on the car, going through tech inspection, and then weather permitting, which was very much the case all 3 days,
Yeah.
you get a race in. So there was no mood, no atmosphere, just quiet.
Was there anything over the PA? Like, did they have the PA announcer at all, or was it just like the engines start and people start moving and, I guess we're racing now?
No PA at all. No background noise. I wasn't there on Sunday for the first Cup race. That was a different rotation. But Jim France, who wasn't even allowed, the CEO of NASCAR, wasn't even allowed in the infield unless you had an essential job. You weren't allowed to go into the infield, me included. I was outside the track. I was in the Earnhardt Tower in Turn 3. Jim France did come over the PA on Sunday before that Cup race, and he thanked everyone for adhering to the protocols and their feedback and their work, and he stressed the importance of what everyone was doing, giving people some sense of normalcy. But that was the only thing that came over the PA for the entire past week that NASCAR was at Darlington. So it was just people doing their job, quiet background.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Did you?
It's a different animal for sure.
Did the four of y'all each call?
Completely different. I mean, listen. So much of what we like to deliver to fans as an industry, and I say we because I feel I cover the sport, but I also feel like I'm part of this too. We're all in this together. I'm a part of the industry. You're a part of the industry. The drivers. We are all here because we love racing. So much of what we like to deliver is that experience, and it's more than just the racing product. It's the Q&As, the autographs, the music, the merchandise trailers, all of that. That's all part of the NASCAR experience. And this wasn't an experience. I'll remember it as an experience. It was an experience to be there and to watch paint dry for 3 days and then see race cars. But it wasn't the NASCAR experience. And that's the thing that was just, I'll never forget it. We're all living something we're all never going to forget. This is our Great Depression, hopefully, knock on wood. This is our seminal moment. But it was memorable, and it was unlike anything we've ever seen before.
What things do you think they ought to do differently, like at Charlotte next week or something? Was there anything that you're like, this might be a good idea, or did you have any ideas there?
No, and before I answer that, actually, I found something to drink. So, this is a delayed what you're drinking. I found a bottled Starbucks frappe drink. And it's mocha flavored. So you know what? Not quite 17 syllables. Not totally a coffee drink. But it's in a bottle. I think it's pretty much on brand.
So here's the big question: is I know like those coffee drinks, they're good cold, they're good hot. I got to imagine this is just like warm sitting in the truck.
No. So I had it in the press box all day today, and the press box was frigid. I had made a huge mistake not bringing a jacket. It was cold. It was cold in there. This drink is actually still pretty cold. Let's see on my dashboard here what the temperature is. It's 62 degrees here in South Carolina in mid-May, which is actually kind of remarkable if you think about it. So no, the drink is cold. It's okay. It's not great. It doesn't suck. And considering that I was about to do, basically radio and YouTube with you guys, I needed something to wetten the pipes a little bit. Otherwise, it was about to get really awkward.
I wonder if they set the AC on like a similar temperature that they would on a regular race weekend, but without any bodies in there. It's just freeze you out.
Yeah, I don't know why they. Well, I'll say this: I don't know if they tried to keep it cold. When I got there on Tuesday, it was actually humid and hot before the storms rolled through, and I was actually appreciative of the AC. But then that first band of rain rolled on through, and it was pretty cold outside. Relatively speaking, for South Carolina in May. I mean, we're all Southerners, so we know, 60 degrees in the middle of the afternoon, mid-May. That's pretty frigid.
Yeah.
So you have the AC on from the day before, and they never turned it off. So I was so happy, partially to leave the track today, just because I wanted to walk out into the sauna that was a 60-degree day in South Carolina.
Yeah.
No kidding. I have frozen my butt off in in the Atlanta Motor Speedway press box.
Oh yeah,
and same for Michigan. Like,
wonder what it is with those. I don't know.
I mean, I appreciate the fact that they got the AC crank because it's way better than being hot and sweaty. But
it is. You can always add layers,
cold.
and I think that no one would appreciate if we started subtracting layers.
Right. Right.
Fair point. Well, let's go ahead and talk some racing then. Let's do that.
But hold on.
Yeah.
Before that, so you had asked about the changes. We had actually talked to NASCAR Vice President Steve O'Donnell about things they learned. This is one thing that I think is very important, and that's why I cut you off. Is I want to make sure I stress this. We're all happy. We're all excited that racing is back, and we've seen just 3 really compelling races on TV. And there's a sense of accomplishment, like mission accomplished. And that's a little premature. And here's the reason why. You guys know this. You're all smart guys. It takes at least 2 weeks, possibly maximum, for the effects of coronavirus to take effect and for someone to show symptoms. And everyone thinks they did the right thing. Everyone had their mask on. Everyone did the things they were supposed to do. Hell, there was a rain delay the past 3 days, and typically during the rain delay, all the crew members go huddle inside the hauler. You can't do that right now. You cannot have 10 crew members huddled in the back of a hauler in a rain delay. That is a disaster waiting to happen. NASCAR had a plan for that. They had a contingency plan. That there were designated areas. You could have a handful of people in the hauler, but you can't have everyone in the hauler. They had people go to their personal cars because everyone drove themselves, and there were designated standing areas, and the front gate on the front stretch was open so people could go under the grandstands. So you could spread everyone out. There's no fans, so it worked out that way. That's all to say that even though everyone tried to do everything the right way, there's still a possibility that something could have gone wrong. Someone could get this, and then we're going to have to reassess. Because if there was a rash of symptomatic individuals traced back, so they're all doing contact tracing, to Darlington or Charlotte, that's going to force NASCAR to have to look at it, see, do they need to shut down? Can they just isolate and come up with a stronger plan? Those are the things you got to consider, and we won't have the answer for that until at least another week and a half, and then 2 weeks after every single race we do. So far so good. Everyone did the right things, but now we wait.
That's a great point. Yeah. So staying diligent, I guess, is the name of the game as we go into Charlotte. So with that, let's go ahead and for the first time in however long this has been, 10 weeks at least, we're going to tear it down. So, well, let's just start with the race that just finished up that caused you to be in the truck instead of at home talking with us, Matt. What are your takeaways from the Xfinity race that just happened?
So, I love that race. I love that race so much for so many reasons. And for one, it was just a good race, right? I mean, great competition, cars sliding around, the low downforce. I love that stuff. Y'all know I love that stuff. But then you've got the Chase Briscoe element. We had found out a couple of days, really when the world found out about what had happened to his expecting wife and their daughter. She miscarried. And we were all just so affected and so sad. I mean, listen, when you cover people for a long time, and I first met Chase Briscoe in 2014 in ARCA. I've known Chase now for a long time, and I know him pretty well. Good dude, good people, and no one deserves that, but it's really bad when it's people that you've grown close to, and for him to respond to this terrible tragedy to his family and his personal life, the therapy of getting back in a race car and then going toe-to-toe, head-to-head with the all-time winningest drivers in the Xfinity Series, one of the best of all time, period, in Kyle Busch, and to beat them. To be bouncing off each other, bouncing off the wall, I tweeted this. I was shaking. I was shaking watching those final handful of laps because I felt like I was being taken through this emotional process. It was like watching a movie and you're just being drug along through the high notes and the low notes. You see Chase Briscoe bounce off the wall coming to 2 to go in turn 4, and that allows Kyle Busch to get there. And then he gets beside him taking the white flag. They're side by side at the line. And then they both bounce off the wall together, and Chase is able to keep it wound up. And again, everything that he's going through, everything that he's dealt with on a personal level, and you're rooting for him. And that's not a slight on Kyle Busch. That's not necessarily rooting for Chase Briscoe, but you root for the good story. And that's a good story. That's a good thing happening to a good person who had some bad stuff happen to him. And you get taken through that experience. I say it all the time. I am a fan with a platform. I am no different than anyone watching on TV. And I am feeling all the things that you guys are feeling, but just a little bit more because I know the people involved. And it just, you feel that. And if you can't feel that through TV, then maybe you need your temperature checked because maybe you're dead too. I don't know. But just a great race. I'm so happy for Chase. I hated everything else. It's so hard to even say I feel happy for him. I am happy that he had a good season. I remember that his spotter told him, because Chase was crying as he came over the radio and said, "Thank you guys." And he was told back, he says, "You're the man. This is for your wife. This was for your baby. You are the man. You beat the best. You are going to remember this day for the rest of your life." And if me saying that or me hearing it, I got goosebumps. If that doesn't affect you in some way, I got nothing for you. That is what we have missed in sports over the past 2 months. Real human beings with real stakes on the line in competition. And that is everything that's good about sports. It's everything that's good about motorsports, and it's everything that's good about NASCAR.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I cried. I'll be honest with you. I shed some tears. I don't know how you couldn't. And I'm not telling anybody that doesn't have their emotions move that way. But, Chase winning and him going down on the knee and doing what he does to, represent his whatever his relationship with religion is, and his wife is fine with me. I definitely cried a lot. I'm so happy for him. That's like the best thing that could have happened, given the circumstances.
Don't forget, by the way, we're talking about the personal, the human, the emotional, and that trumps everything else. But purely from a professional standpoint, from a racing standpoint, Chase Briscoe put a lot of pressure on this year. It took him a long time to put the funding together alongside Ford to be able to run. He is immensely talented, but he doesn't have any family funding. He doesn't have a ton of money. He said this year that he felt like he needed to win 8 races to be able to continue doing what he does, to be able to validate his need to find funding. And here he's won 2 of the first 4 in the Xfinity Series. He just beat the winningest driver in this division, one of the best of all time. He did it with everything that's happened over the past week. He may or may not reach 8 races, but if there is any scenario where Chase Briscoe is not racing at the highest level, whether it's another full-time Xfinity season, he should be in Cup. But if he doesn't have one of those 2 options next year, there is no justice in the world. So we can talk about the emotional, the personal, the human, but from a professional standpoint, this was a huge win because he beat Kyle Busch. He's won 2 of the first 4 in a season in which he said he needed to win 8 overall. He is getting there and then some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he didn't just beat Kyle Busch. He stood in the gas for 3 laps. And he beat the best race driver that the Xfinity Nationwide Push, whatever we want to call it now, Grand National Series has ever seen.
Well, and on top of that, beat all the other people too. There was a bunch of others.
Right.
You know, that's the crazy part about doing this. You know, it's funny, Matt. One of the things, you know, I've thought about before, why do we watch sports? Why are we watching these other people do this thing that I'm not good at, and why do I care? And I've never heard it put so perfectly and succinctly as you did by saying that it's that personal human emotion that you can only get while being in competition. And that strikes a huge chord, nerve, whatever you want to call it, that, yes, I think that is a unique emotion. You know, thinking about when have I ever been as emotional when, you know, back when he was racing that Casey Kane come across the finish line first, or you know, being at Georgia Tech games and having a huge win or something. I mean, that's I think you hit it on the head there.
So, listen, I'll take it a step further. I think that sports is a reflection of the human condition. And that's to say that we're all struggling, we're all trying to build towards something that's bigger than what we've had. And I think that process is all reflected in sports. You know, it's about, you know, the camaraderie, the teamwork, building something. And I think all the things that our lives are about can be summed up and analogous to sports. We all relate to sports because we all compete. We compete every day. We compete at our jobs. We compete to be better in our personal relationships, our romantic relationships, to be better fathers, to be better brothers, sons, husbands, boyfriends. We are always competing, trying to be the best versions of ourselves. And I think that's what sports is when you really sum it up. It's just about trying to compete and be the best version of you. And I think that's why it kind of resonates with us as a society, as a culture, as people, because that's life. Sports are life. They're synonymous.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you on that, Matt. I'm actually sitting right in front of my scrapbook from 1999, so it's 21 years old now. And I was asked by a friend, you know, what about this COVID stuff, you know, would have really upset you? And I said, well, I got a chance to play for a state title in, you know, the Georgia's highest classification of soccer. And I wouldn't have gotten to do that had I not. But I have a picture in my scrapbook of us losing that game, and everybody on the team is bawling their eyes out. And that's something that resonates forever, because the emotion is what matters. The reason why we were crying is because it meant something to us. Yeah. And so that's why I totally get where Chase was at today.
Yeah. There's something there. There's something at stake. Let's talk about the cup races a bit. So starting with what I call Darlington 1 here, Harvick winning the race, Hendrick looking strong, and this was the return. This was the big deal. This was, you know, Fox really putting on the TV show for it. NASCAR, you know, doing their thing and showing us what they got. The fans showed up in terms of viewership, 6.32 million viewers from what I saw, 38% higher than the last actual race that we had. And besides Daytona 500 here and there, it's the strongest viewership since or in 3 years, since Atlanta in 2017. So the people showed up. You know, Harvick takes the checkered. What did you think about that race, Matt?
So it was a good race. I mean, I think that Darlington is such a wonderful racetrack just in general, and it doesn't really matter, you know, what you throw at it. We saw that this week, right? You have 2 cup races. You had a day race. You had a night race. Both races, the high downforce, low horsepower package. Then you had the Xfinity race during the day with the high power, low downforce. So you just threw all sorts of scenarios at Darlington Raceway, and it delivered every single time. So that's the key thing. You know, Darlington is wonderful. It is representative of an era where racetracks were built with one purpose, and that was to deliver the best possible show imaginable. And, you know, there are so many of these D-shaped, mile-and-a-half abominations that are all built to the same cookie cutter spec, and they've got the D-shaped tri-oval because they want the grandstands to wrap around the front stretch so you can see all the way around. And what you see is just generally awful racing. And you don't have that with Darlington. It's awesome no matter what you throw at it because it's unique. But the two ends of the track are different, so crew chiefs are challenged by it. Drivers are challenged by it. So with that being said, I thought the Wednesday race was better than the Sunday race. I thought that the tire wear and the tire fall off made the Sunday race probably a better race than it should have been, especially with my critiques of this package. I was frustrated that you just can't pass the leader. And we still saw that on Wednesday too. Even with, enough tire fall off, it's still so hard to pass the leader. I think between the two races combined, we only had two real legitimate lead changes under green. I'm not going to count the one where Jimmy Johnson, had his hiccup there at the end of the first stage, and he was technically passed by William Byron. But you just cannot pass the leader because you're able to get maximum downforce on your nose, and you are like Superman up there. And I think that when Kevin Harvick and Alex Bowman had that race off the final restart, they both knew that was for the win because whoever won that race, or the race off the restart, was going to win the race overall. Kevin Harvick won the battle off pit road. He had the number one pit stall, so he had the lane advantage. And pretty much Alex Bowman, short of wiping out both guys, didn't really stand a chance there because we saw it over and over again Sunday and Wednesday. If you're on the bottom, you are disadvantaged because you can't carry the momentum, especially with this package that, pretty much emphasizes being wide open. It's harder to do that from the bottom, and you really can't, rotate the center the way you can up top. And so that's frustrating because, Matt Kenseth talked about it after Sunday. It was his first time driving the package. And he said there were so many times he would dive under a guy like he used to, and you just can't complete the pass because you run into a wall of air. So that's my package gripe for today. But there's some other things too. The choose cone rule, that argument popped back up. My bud Austin Dillon throwing it out there. Appreciate that. So there's some things that you can probably look at to mitigate the lane selection, but it's still pretty much impossible to pass a guy when he has clean air. And that's kind of the takeaway. That race was over with 30 laps to go, the first race, because Kevin Harvick won the race off the restart.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I wrote down just to make sure I didn't lose it when you said it, that I love the point that, the race was in the restart zone, and in that first, whatever you want to call it, 500 yards, and then after that, it's not at the checkered at that point. So, kind of moving. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me go deeper into that because I know a lot of people will fight me on this rules package, and I embrace it. Let's talk about it because I want people to understand where I'm coming from, and I want to understand where people are coming from. People show me the passing numbers and say, look how much better this package is. Look at all the passing, and look how closer the cars are together. And I'll grant you that. If you want to watch the TV show and you see a bunch of cars closer together, if that's what you want to see, you're getting it. But they're not passing. You need tons of cautions, and all the passing takes place off the restart because they're side by side. Everyone's in dirty air. But here's the deal. When you get longer into a green flag run, about 5 laps into a run, the top 5 are pretty much locked in position. I would say the top 7, especially on a mile and a half. They're all locked into position because the leader has the maximum amount of clean air possible, and you're just not going to overcome it. How many times do we see in one of these low-power, high-downforce races that you can get to the rear bumper, but you try to get to the left side, to the right side, and you run into that wall of air? The air is coming off the nose of the leading car, and you run into that. And you don't have enough power, because it's 550 horsepower compared to 750, to push through it if you have a stronger car. So you don't have enough power to overcome the air. And the first place guy has the most amount of downforce, cleanest air. Second place guy, he's got pretty good clean air too. Not enough to get by that second place guy. Third place, fourth place, same thing. Where does the passing take place? 7th place on back, because then everyone's in terrible air. Matt Kenseth said it. He says that, you get to the corner and you start to push up. And if you didn't drive that corner right, it kills your lap and you get passed by 4 guys. Clint Boyer said it at Michigan last year, that he would work so hard to get under a guy, and he'd finally complete the pass. But because, once he gets around, he starts to push because he runs into the guy that's in front of him, and he gets the dirty air, and it pushes him up the track, and then he gets passed by the 3 guys behind him. So those guys are like hot potatoing each other. They're just kind of shuffling the deck. Tons of passing. If you watch the mid-pack right now in a NASCAR race with the high downforce, low power package, they are just shuffling. But up front, there's just no passing. So don't throw the passing stats at me because it's all happening on the back where these guys just keep running into each other's dirty air. But if you're up front, you see it. It's not because they're the best cars. Generally, you're up front because it's the best cars. But it's just so hard to pass when you get that clean air down. And so that was even frustrating at a place like Darlington. The only thing that saved these races, and thank God, I love it. So I have no complaints, even with the Cup races. What made it good was the tire fall off is so severe because that place is so abrasive that once you lose the tires, it doesn't matter how much clean air you got because you're a sitting duck. Denny Hamlin on Wednesday, if that race hadn't been rained out, he ain't holding the lead for nothing. He's got 20-lap-old tires. Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott, they were racing really hard. And let's go into that, too.
Please.
We can talk about the finger. We can talk about the finger later, but here's the deal. Those guys were racing really, really hard because they knew Denny, as the leader, was not going to hold on to that spot. And so they both needed to be the first car to pass Denny because once they got that clean air on equal tires to each other, the race was over. Just like the race was over on Sunday when Kevin Harvick got by Alex Bowman. That's why the crash happened, because they both needed to be the first guy with clean air to pass Denny Hamlin. Because at that point, the race would have been over. Even though they were racing for second, they knew they needed to be the first one to pass Denny because clean air would win them the race. So hopefully, and I know that's long-winded. I know that's a very long thing, but I know a lot of people are listening and they're wondering, why do you hate the package? The cars are close together. NASCAR says there's tons of passing. There is. Yes to both. But I just want you to understand some of the disclaimers there, and hopefully these two races are fresh enough in people's minds, what I said about Bowman and Harvick, that battle, and what happened between Chase and Kyle, that you can see what the air is doing, because it'll change your entire perspective of how they're racing once you understand what's happening.
It was going to be, or it is in the show notes, to talk about that, obviously, with and what I was going to say about it with Kyle Busch and Chase was Kyle's too good of a driver to make that kind of mistake, and he's too he and Chase have no beef. There is no reason for him to do it on purpose, and I don't believe hitting Chase was not on purpose. Trying to squeeze his way into somewhere where he didn't have room might have been more on purpose, not knowing that it's Chase or whatever else. But I guess it brings me a little bit of solace in what you said about Denny's not going to hold that spot, and I have to be the first to get it in order to win the race, and that's what he sacrificed. Because I was between the rock and the hard place. I can't believe that Kyle Busch has any malice toward Chase Elliott and would just wreck him on purpose, which it looked like he did. Somebody said if this were iRacing, he'd have been disconnected by the mods. I was like, yeah, he probably would have been. And then on the flip side, to make that stupid of a move, if I can just say it, bluntly, I didn't know which way to lean in that. So
I would encourage everyone to go back and listen to this segment, what I'm about to say. Listen to it again, and this time do it with the race replay, or at least the replay of that last restart playing on in the background, because I kind of want to walk everyone through what happened. So since then, we've talked to Kyle, and he's kind of verified what my working theory there was, but I'm going to walk everyone through it. So if you remember, the restart happens. You have Denny Hamlin and Matt DiBenedetto on old tires. They don't have any tires left. That's a story for another day. They give you 9 sets of tires for a 310-mile Cup race, and you've somehow burned through all of them. It worked out, but shame on you, Chris Gabehart, because you should have had at least one more set of tires left, but you didn't. And it actually won them the race, so maybe not shame on you, Gabehart. But anyway, Denny Hamlin, Matt DiBenedetto are on the front row. They are on just terrible tires. We talked earlier about how the high side is the advantageous line, and you don't want to be on the bottom. Well, Denny was the leader. He had the momentum. He was fine. He was able to get on the gas first. And what happened to DiBenedetto? This is what I'm talking about here, understanding the air. He's on the bottom. He is a sitting duck. He is just swallowed up by Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick and Chase Elliott because he didn't have the preferred line, and he wasn't able to gas off with Denny Hamlin. So at that point, Kyle Busch is second. He gets a run on Denny on the backstretch. Kyle's mistake, and he admitted this, so I'm not calling Kyle out. He's already said it, is he dived under Denny. He wanted to do it right then and there. And the reason why is we all knew the rain was coming. We can talk about how Denny's on 20-lap-old tires and, he's going to be a sitting duck, but it could rain literally at any moment. So Kyle felt like he had to go for the lead right then and there because you just don't know. If he had waited one more lap, let the field get a little bit more strung out, get some cleaner air on his nose, he probably could have passed him that way. He did it way too soon. But the moment that he went under Denny and ran into that wall of air that I told you about as a second-place guy, even with newer tires, he timed that pass, that attempted pass, so poorly, it stalled out his momentum because he doesn't have the power to get back on the gas and maintain that momentum. It's basically like a crate engine. It killed his momentum, and he gets swallowed up by Chase. So now Chase is on the outside, and again, what did I say earlier? You want to be on the outside, even after the field gets rolling, because you want to be able to carry that momentum, stay on the gas with fresh tires, and never lift. So he's stuck on the inside. He knows he's in a terrible spot because Chase has already gotten by him. And once again, they need to be the first guy to pass Denny as you get that clean air. There was no scenario in which Kyle Busch was winning that race if both Chase and Kevin Harvick behind him passed him. Game over. Because once Denny's tires go away, whoever passes him first wins the race, assuming there's no rain. Mm-hmm. So Kyle's facing two desperate scenarios. One, he needs to make sure he's as close to the front as possible because the air is cleaner. And two, he needs to be close to the front because it's about to rain. He's got to get the lead. He saw a gap between Chase Elliott in front of him, Kevin Harvick behind him, and he went for the gap, and he misjudged it. He said that on TV. He misjudged it, and he crashed Chase. And that's why it happened. That's not to justify it. It's not to say it's okay or it's good. But I'm telling you, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't because they were racing hard and Kyle got fed up. Kyle just needed to get back in the top, and he could not let Kevin Harvick pass him. And he was trying to be the first guy to pass Denny. And he screwed that part up. And above all else, that is the most sincere and contrite that I have ever seen Kyle Busch after an incident like that. That was more contrite than when he crashed Dale Jr. at Richmond in 2008. He felt legitimately bad for how that played out. Kyle Busch, say what you will about Kyle, he is so unapologetically himself. He does not care what you think about him. He doesn't care what Chase Elliott fans think about him after that. But you could tell that he sincerely he felt a little bit of guilt for wrecking, one, Chase Elliott's car. I've covered Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch doing their late model stuff as far back as 2009. Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch have never had a run-in. There is no animosity between the two of them. There is no malice. So that part doesn't make sense either. But maybe most importantly, people forget when Kyle Busch said on TV that he's got a lot of friends over there in the 9 car, that's not Kyle Busch talking out of both sides of his ass. His first crew chief as a Cup Series driver was Alan Gustafson, the number 5 car at Hendrick. And many of the foundation of this 9 car is the old 5 car. That's literally his old team. And so Kyle, he still buds with Alan Gustafson. He's never had a problem with Chase Elliott. And I thought that was the most contrite, sincere, and apologetic Kyle Busch that we've ever seen. It's unfortunate that it played out that way. I just want fans to understand what the dynamics were why Kyle Busch felt like he needed absolutely to fill that gap, even though it wasn't there, because that was his race. One way or the other, to him, that was the checkered flag.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Go ahead, Rusty.
Well, the whole explanation, however, I can't make the leap of logic of, he made a mistake there. He didn't just make a mistake. He made a mistake by, like, over a foot, right? And he knows this car as good or better than any person does. I might even say he knows this car in particular better than any other race car driver. He knows he didn't have it, I guess, at least in the back of his mind or something. He knows he didn't have it. It felt like a Jesus take the wheel moment. Sherman, you were going to say, sorry.
Oh, no, I mean, I would 100% agree with what you just said. I mean, I don't even know what I would add to that other than I don't think it matters very much how contrite Kyle Busch is about the whole situation and how sympathetic he might be to Chase and his team, or whatever the relationship he still has with Alan Gustafson. I believe that we're going to see later in this year, the 18 is going to have a chassis get wadded up by the 9.
And regardless of right, wrong, or indifferent, I think that's the natural course of things that almost must happen at this point. It's almost, okay, well, now we must do this.
Well, I mean...
Okay, let me challenge that for a minute.
Okay.
So why, though? Because the last time that this happened to Chase Elliott, and the stakes were so much higher. Let's go back to Martinsville in November of 2017. We all remember that. Chase Elliott getting out of the car, confronting Denny Hamlin. You could read his lips. You wrecked me. You wrecked me. And that was a race that if Chase Elliott had won, it would send him to the championship four, the final four for the first time. Those stakes were real. This is the 5th race of the season. In the grand scheme of things, both of these guys are going to the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, Denny Hamlin talked about it this morning. He had a press conference, and he was asked about it. And Denny said he felt like, he's like, look, I recognize I'm Kyle's teammate, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But nobody would respect Chase Elliott any less if he didn't go back and retaliate. No one's going to respect him more if he does retaliate. It was one of those things where he didn't door him. So when people say that, it wasn't a slight mistake, it kind of was. If he was trying to ram him, he would have doored him. It damaged his car. He really thought that he had a gap there because he destroyed his car. If that race stays green, he has to pit. He ain't finishing second. That's the thing. Denny Hamlin wasn't going to win because his tires weren't going to last. Kyle Busch wasn't going to last because he has to pit. He thought he had a spot. Now, I think the fan takes over in all of us. It's like, okay, well, eye for an eye, ear for an ear. But all that does is escalate it. Maybe Chase Elliott and Alan Gustafson feels like, they've got to get theirs back for being crashed out of the 5th race of the season. But the calculation, and this is the dangerous part, so when do you decide to do it? You're not going to wait till the playoffs to do it because then the stakes are more.
Right.
So do you do it the 13th race of the season? Okay, well, then that says to Kyle Busch, who we know can be vindictive. Okay, well, then Kyle Busch is going to get him 24th, 25th race of the season. Or maybe, at this point, he's so ticked off because he felt like the 2 wrongs didn't make a right, he gets you the first race of the playoffs. Where does it end? And that's actually a very important consideration the 9 team has to make. How worth it was the 5th race of the season in the middle of May when there's so much more that's going to happen later to you? Is it really worth that? And that's the question.
I think you have to
keep in mind. By the way, one other thing. Keep in mind too. They have talked on the phone, and we're going to talk to Chase tomorrow. So we haven't got a chance to hear from Chase and his side of it. That's going to be the next interesting part. But Kyle said they had a conversation. He says it was good. It was fine. And the quote was, "Chase Elliott is a class act. We've known that for years. It was a good conversation," and I believe that.
Well, I think I guess my perspective is obviously biased.
Same. I mean, I get it.
But I mean, that'll happen when you're being NASCAR fans and whatnot, or fans of any sport for that matter. But the thing that that makes it different to me, Matt, is I totally agree with everything you've just said, except for the fact that if Kyle doesn't dump Chase, he probably wins the race.
Possibly. Here's my perspective: is Chase?
He wins the race how? Because at that point he's in the disadvantageous spot. He's on the bottom, so he's done. That's the entire reason he made the move.
Top. He was on the top.
Wait, what do you mean he was on the top?
No, Chase was on the top. So Kyle was on the bottom. There's no scenario that he's winning that race.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Chase is probably winning that race.
Oh yeah, Chase is sure.
With Denny on old tires.
Yeah, we thought you were saying Kyle was going to win it.
No, there's no scenario Kyle wins the race.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's why he made the move.
Yeah, so I mean, Kyle had to make the move, and that's what we're talking about. Is that's part of racing, and sometimes this stuff happens. And whether or not we allow emotion to get involved with it or not doesn't really matter that much. And, Kyle was obviously, very considerate of the fact that he screwed up. But at the same time, I don't know that whether a phone call that was well received or not is going to be enough for this thing to be over.
My perspective is this.
I'm curious to hear from Chase tomorrow, but I've had so many drivers tell me, and I know that Chase is from the same
place,
kind of school of logic. He wants to hear that a driver at least is aware, hey, you cost me.
Yes.
Same thing with what happened with Chase and Denny. Denny tried. It didn't make a difference. The stakes were much higher, so Chase got him back at Phoenix.
Yes.
But drivers often say that, especially if the stakes aren't that high, and a win's a big deal, especially at this level, I know. But at least make me aware that you know. Because if you do not show me that you're aware of what this cost me, I'm going to show you what you cost me. And I think by Kyle making that phone call, he probably stopped that from escalating. Now, again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's going to be a wadded up car in the future.
I think you're. I would say that's probably a really good perspective.
Sherwin, from my perspective, here's the thing: you get him back at Charlotte, or you don't get him back at all. And Gustafson said this. He said, "I am tired of getting run over. I am tired of being the guy who." Gets the phone call at the end of the day and gets a thing that said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, this was not the thing. At some point, you got to stop being the guy that just keeps getting railroaded. This was Casey Kane and Kyle Busch however many years ago. Kyle ran over him 3 times. Casey never got him back. After some point, I don't care how many accidents there are, you better go, do some racing stuff, man. This will get me fired up. Like, you got to go get him back at Charlotte or don't get him back at all and go on to the next one, and hopefully the next time you're wrecked, they're not saying, "Oh, well, sorry, I didn't mean to. It was a mistake," and blah blah blah. You gotta put your name out there. I don't know. I feel like this is the hit the big guy at the prison thing.
I'm kind of in between where Matt and you are, Rusty, in that I watched Jeff Gordon get wrecked at Bristol. I believe that was 2006. Might have been 2005. And he waited 4 months to get to Chicagoland when he just dumped Matt Kenseth.
Yeah, that's kind of statute of limitations right there.
Guess what? Return favor.
Yeah, that to me, the statute of limitations is about 1 to 2 races. Otherwise, what's the point anymore? But get him back at Charlotte. I don't care if it's Charlotte 1 or Charlotte 2, but get him back. And then,
he does have 2 races in the next 8 days to get it figured out.
Exactly.
And maybe he won't. Maybe that phone call was enough. But we know that Chase, and I know this personally because I saw Chase race when he was 10 years old in a damn Bandolero at Atlanta Motor Speedway at Thursday Thunder, and he dumped the leader after the leader won the race because the leader bumped him out of the lead coming to the checker. Like Chase don't have no problem with dumping somebody when they screw him up.
All
so we'll see how it goes, I guess.
So I wanted to touch on this subject because we're getting late on the timer here, but you mentioned it, Matt, that race number 2 was, I mean, in many ways, the drama and everything else. We didn't even talk about the middle fingers, which props to FS1. They didn't like cut away. They more like zoomed in on the middle fingers happening. And so good for them on, and the Jeff Gordon and the announcing crew were just like, yeah, well, there's that. So, props to that.
I already bought the damn shirt.
Well,
yeah, the Jeff Gordon quote was, "Oh boy."
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
The shirt says, "Oh boy," and then it says
the
one finger salute, and it has a Chase silhouette of him flicking the bird. And I already bought that shirt.
That's fantastic. So I feel like between the drama and the racing and everything else, that second race was, I'm going to say, objectively better than the first. And I wanted to get your take, Matt, on the reasoning behind that. And there's several things going on. We talked about tire fall off some. It was a shorter race. It was, the rain was such a inevitability that, especially toward the end, it was getting crazy. But once you start the race, you're already toward the end because it's shorter. It was at night. Is this all these things combined, or do you think there was one or two things that were, really affecting there?
Well, let's talk about one thing that we didn't talk about there, and you didn't list it either: the invert.
The invert.
And how drastically the invert changed the complexion of the race. You have Kevin Harvick, who was really good on Sunday. I don't think he was the best car. I think right now Alex Bowman and the 88 team, they've got the best intermediate 550 package car right now. They're able to pass in situations where, I outlined earlier, you shouldn't be able to pass. So I think the 88's got the best car right now. But Kevin Harvick's a really good driver. We all know the resume. It speaks for itself. But you take Kevin Harvick, who won that race on Sunday, and you invert him. You flip the field. You're making him start 20th. That puts Ryan Preece and Ty Dillon on the front row. And, oh, by the way, the things that I talked about the package that people just can't understand why I dislike it, nothing against Ty Dillon and the Germain Racing 13. They went out and they led a ton of laps early on before the tires started to kind of fall off a little bit. And they did that because all things equal, tires being equal, clean air makes you Superman. And I only bring that up again because what does it do to you if you had the best car? By the way, it's the same car that Harvick won with on Sunday, and you stick that car on 20th, that car was ill. That car was set up on Sunday to either be leading or near the front of the field. When you get a little bit more downforce on your nose, you stick that same car pretty much largely unchanged, and you stick it 20th, oh, that car was ill. But that made for a good race because now you got one of the best cars with the number one pit stall who should be able to gain positions on pit road mid-pack. You had a bunch of good cars there. You had Clint Boyer. Clint Boyer made that race so fun. I just got on the 14's radio and go back and look through my tweets. They were so much fun. Him and Brett and John Klossmeyer, they are just a hoot. And so they're having a good old time cutting up. But anyway, so what you had is you mix the field up with that invert. And I thought that made the racing really compelling because all those things I hate about the package, the inverts actually made it worthwhile. Because now you're sticking good cars into the dirty air, and you're taking so-so cars, and you're giving them the clean air. So you know what? If we have to have this package that emphasizes the clean air, then why are we qualifying and giving all the best cars the best air and giving so-so cars the worst air? If you're going to have this package that neuters the cars, at least put the best cars in the middle of the shit and make them have to actually work for it. And that's what made Wednesday's race so compelling.
Love it. Sherman, you were saying?
So, I mean, I don't know. We probably have gone as long as we probably should have gone at this point, but I'll add
so much to talk about. There's racing. I love it.
Right. There's so much racing to talk about.
Hey, who's counting down? I got 6 more hours on this drive. We can go all night.
I knew you had a long drive ahead of you. I guess what I would say is, so if we're just talking about the basic physics and science of the race car, why is it good for us not to be running 1,000 horsepower like we were making 10 years ago? Like what?
So ultimately, what it comes down to is NASCAR is working to gain more OEMs, more manufacturers. Right now, we got Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota, and it's been expressed through them. Remember, NASCAR also operates IMSA, and so NASCAR has a great relationship with so many manufacturers who aren't competing in stock car racing. They deal with pretty much every manufacturer.
Yeah, I mean, Nissan, Acura, you name it.
Right. And so it's been expressed to them, as they tell it to us in the media, that they believe that the future to make racing more viable is something with a little less power. And the reason they give, and to me, I see this as being kind of dubious, but they believe that lower power is something that more resembles the showroom cars. That's where I'm kind of rolling my eyes a little bit, because you've got street cars now that have more power than cup cars with this 550 package. You know, I'm driving a Cadillac right now that makes more power than the cup car with the 550 horsepower. There's two ways. One,
I mean, the Dodge, the Hellcat makes 800 horsepower.
Right. So there's two ways of looking at it. They do believe that this lower power formula, this next engine formula that's going to come out, it's going to be delayed now. It's supposed to be 2023. It might be 2024 now with the coronavirus shutdown. But the thought is that the next engine is going to be, they don't like this word because it runs off a lot of people, but it's going to be hybrid. It's going to have some electrification, some electrical components, and it's going to be 550 horsepower. So to get us to that next engine formula, this is a bridge. Let's put the tapered spacer on this one, make it 550 horsepower, and they're trying to determine what could be the best version of their racing product with 550 horsepower. I don't personally, Matt Weaver talking, I don't get so hung up in power. Power is awesome. I love power. But you can have the great racing we saw today with 750 horsepower that we got with 550 horsepower. But you've got to get the cars off the ground. And the entire reason these cars are sealed, you can't squeeze a piece of paper under a cup car right now. And the reason why is they don't want the cars lifting off the ground. The maximum downforce, you seal the cars to the track at speed. Well, if you're slowing them back down to the amount of power they made in the 80s, go back and look at the cars in the 80s. They were showing that race on TV from Bristol, the old late model Sportsman series, which is now the Xfinity series from Bristol, 1985. Those cars were lifted way off the ground. They made about 500 horsepower. So if you're going to lower the power,
with a V6,
right? So if you believe that you're going to need to have a lower power engine with electrification, some electrical components, that's cool. But if you're going to slow the cars down, great, take all the downforce off, because they're running the same downforce levels they had in 2014. This is all the perspective in the world. They're running 2014 level aero, and back then they had an unrestricted engine, which means they were making upwards of 950 horses, according to some dyno test. They've got the same aero package in 2020, but with almost half the horsepower. And why? Because I believe, NASCAR believes, that their ideal version of the sport is you just bunch the cars up together. Now, granted, they can't pass. They can't escape each other either because they don't have enough power to break away from each other. So they just run, in the top five, single file. They can't break through the air. And then a bunch of guys are passing and crashing mid-pack, which allows you to have a restart, which is the best way to pass with this package because you have to be side by side. Yeah. Once you get single file, you can't pass. So if you just keep having guys crash in the mid-pack, it allows the guys up front to race because they restart them side by side. That's my tangent.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that tangent quite well. I think the motor platform that NASCAR is going to have to develop is a dual overhead cam if they want to invite new manufacturers into the industry of stock car auto racing that's not IMSA. If they want to get into NASCAR, they're going to have to say, all right, we're all done with this truck motor that we have learned how to make a ton of torque and horsepower with a center cam, and we're going to have to go dual overhead.
Fellas, let's go ahead and tear it down so that we can get the people off to wherever they're going. Not tear it down. We're going to gas it up. I said tear it down. We're gassing it up, fellas. Charlotte, we've got multiple races coming in Charlotte. We got, all kinds of excitement and everything going on. What are your expectations? What are you looking forward to, Matt? We lost Matt.
Oh, man.
Oh,
No. I'm overwhelmed almost because listen, I started the show this way, so it's fitting that I'll end the show this way too. I'm just happy to have racing back. And so we can talk about Charlotte, and we can talk about Martinsville and Bristol and Atlanta, Talladega, Miami, all the races they added to the schedule. And we could break down every single one of them, and I can tell you the things that I'm looking forward to, the things that I'm a little skeptical of, whatever. The thing that I'm just most looking forward to is that I get to now, because of the condensed, schedule, multiple times a week, not just on Saturday and Sunday. I get to talk about racing on Saturday and Sunday and Tuesday and Wednesday. I am so happy that I get to make up for lost time, that we're going to have tons of racing to talk about after basically going through 2 off seasons with just one tiny season and a month wedged in between. I'm just happy to have racing back, and I'm looking forward to, riding every day, not talking about video games. And I love the video game stuff. I love the iRacing. I know it's not a video game, it's a sim. But we're talking about honest to God, real race cars at real tracks driven by real people.
My man, I love it. So with that, fellas, let's make some picks. So Sherwin, last week you picked Kurt Busch, finished 3rd, and then you picked Chase. Unfortunate finish in 38th after all that. I picked Bowman in the first race, who finished 2nd, and I picked Kyle Busch, who subsequently finished 2nd. So we'll let you go first this time. But before we do, Weaver, give us those picks for Charlotte.
Okay, so we got 2 Cup races. Is that what we're going for here?
Yeah, we got the Coke 600, and then we got the Coke half 600.
Absolutely can pick 2, but I think we're going on Tuesday. But yeah, give us 2 picks.
Okay, so for the 600, I think I'm going to go with Keselowski. And that's kind of an unorthodox pick because I'm over here talking about how good the Hendrick cars are. And, Kevin Harvick is obviously really good right now as well. I think that Penske has started to put together some really good stuff. And I just think that what we saw yesterday out of that crew is it portends good things. A longer race, I think it benefits a more veteran driver. So I've got the 22 winning on the Sunday race, 600. I got to get my schedule right. But for the shorter race, the sprint race is what we're going to call it. I think Alex Bowman gets another one. I think just right now in general, that is the best car with the best team and a driver that, while he's good, still figuring it out as a Cup driver, still a young driver. But I think Alex Bowman gets his 2nd of the year in the short race, and this is going to be a really good season for them. I think that we're talking about a legitimate championship contender out of the 88, and they're going to put it together and make that statement in the shorter Charlotte race.
Sherwin, give us picks.
I think Matt stole all my picks. So no, I mean I wanted to pick both those guys, but I was going to swap them. So I'll just go ahead and do that. I want to pick Alex Bowman for the 600, and I want to pick Joey Logano for the sprint race on Wednesday.
So you're going different with Joey instead of Keselowski.
Oh yeah. Sorry, you're right.
All good. So for the 600, I mean, I think it's time. We'll see what happens with Kyle Busch, but Coke 600 has Chase Elliott written all over it for me. So I'm going Chase there. I'm trying to think of a good kind of I don't know, a B+ driver that I can go with in the Coke 600. Let me think. Not Coke 600, but the I keep calling it the Coke Zero just because it's like or whatever one of the what was the Coke that was like half the calories.
I think it's Alsco, I think, is the name of the title sponsor. They just announced it today.
Oh, yeah. I was just trying to think of that Coke product that was like half the calories or whatever. It was around for a while in that green bottle. I don't remember.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah. I've been calling it that because it's, half the half the calories.
Coke.
You know what? Let's go with somebody who's been running well. Toyota is where I'm going, and in these short races, you never know. I'm going to go with that Jones boy.
I like that pick.
Okay, fellas, it's been a marathon. This is not the sprint here that we usually have. It's been an absolute blast, and boy, I got fired up a little bit sometimes, Sherwin. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
That'll happen, man.
We're getting excited.
We're all passionate about this sport. We love it.
We love it.
And we love talking about it.
Weaver, tell the folks where they can find you. What's coming up next for you?
Oh, the best place to find me, my best takes. My best takes are on my personal Twitter. But my best racing takes are Matt Weaver AW on Twitter. All of my stories are on Matt Weaver Motorsports on Facebook. And hopefully more often than here in the past couple of months, you should be able to find me more on the PETM podcast.
My man.
Appreciate it. Hey, Matt, stick around a few minutes for the PETM After Dark because I want to talk some baseball with you.
I got nowhere else to go. I'm stuck here.
Sherwin, tell the folks where they can find you, and then I'll close this thing out.
Yeah, sure. You can find me at Pregame Engineer on Twitter and at Andrew L. Sherwin on Instagram.
Well, as y'all know, you can find us at PETM Podcast on the Twitter handle. As always, I'm Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace at Tailgate Mayor. We've got, the Twitter, the Instagram, everywhere else that you can find social media. We're there. I can't wait to talk to y'all next week after Charlotte, and we'll be doing the Tuesday, so it'll be in between races. It's going to be a fun deal. I can't wait to talk to y'all then, and have a great week. Let's go racing.
Revving engines get to roaring, fans are screaming, drinks are pouring. We are NASCAR. Drop the flag, foot on the gas, and let's go, 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 go. And it's full throttle, it's wide open, it's cold beer bottles and good times rolling. We're built for speed and we ain't slowing down. It's finding the groove, it's the thrill of the chase. It's running on fumes in a checkered first place. We're stealing wheels and racing hard. We are NASCAR, we are NASCAR.
Fellas, that is the end of the podcast portion. We are still live on the YouTube and hanging out with folks for PETM After Dark. Sherwin, you just pop you a drink?
I did. I went and got a new beer.
My man. Weaver, how we doing?
I ran out of the coffee, so we're about to get a little dry here. So hopefully I keep the pipes lubricated.
When's your next pit stop? Have you decided yet?
Well, I've got a quarter of a tank left, so
Okay.
I can get to 18 miles away from the Georgia state line. So let's get into Georgia. Hopefully, once I get to the land of the quick trips, I can stop, top off, give me a quick trip sandwich, and be on my merry way.
There you go.
18 miles. That's about Graniteville, I would imagine.
Edgefield, Aiken is where I'm at.
Edgefield. Okay, yeah. So that was one of the places I interviewed at when I was getting out of college. Did not take the job.
I can't imagine there's jobs here to be taken. This is woodsy.
Well, that would have been 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Parkdale Mills. But no, what I wanted to, we had a really fun conversation. I think a lot of people on the old Twitterverse that follow you on your personal account thought that we were, cussing each other out. And I think we both knew that we were not doing that. But with the whole thing that's going on with baseball and the owners and the players are squabbling over what they're going to do with the fact that we're probably only going to play, I don't know, maybe we're hoping for 82 games, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you love baseball and you're a huge Cubs fan, and obviously Rusty and I are huge Braves fans, and it's a very interesting situation to deal with because obviously in our lives we haven't dealt with it. In '94, Rusty will probably remember this because we were both teenagers when the strike happened in '94, and all that stuff, and one of our favorite players, Tom Glavine, was the guy that said, "Yep, we're going to walk out." And I mean, you feel a certain kind of way about that, but I'm curious to hear, vocally what you're thinking about what's going on with baseball and the owners and the player situation.
Before you do, Matt, I will say that all was forgiven in '95 for anything that happened with Braves.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing with David Justice in Game 6.
Oh, yeah. When he made fun of the fans,
wanted to hate him, and then he hits a homer, and they win 1-0. It's like, how you not going to love that guy?
Right.
I think the city of Atlanta were the only ones to immediately forgive baseball. There was a lot of damage done to the game, and in hindsight, I can't believe I'm saying this now, knowing what we know, but thank God for the home run chase, Sosa McGuire, because it brought people back quicker than they probably were going to be willing to come back because they felt betrayed by the players and the owners for costing them that season. I mean, hell, it cost one of my favorite cities, Montreal, their baseball team. I love Montreal. And, yeah, I mean, a lot of people have memories. I'm not quite old enough to remember the strike. In '94, I was 7, something like that, 8. I was born in '88. All the years run together. So I don't remember, but I'm just barely old enough to remember hearing the fallout in '98, '99, people talking about how this is what made people forgive baseball. And so I think it's very important, just as a fan, I'm talking purely now as a sports fan, not a reporter, that they figure this out because we don't need that again. And I think a lot of this is just politics. And politics, as we know right now from watching Washington, politics is ugly. And baseball politics is ugly too.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think I called them all babies. And you said, I don't really understand why you would call them all babies. But the local sports radio today basically said the same thing that I tweeted at you, which doesn't validate anything that I said by any means. But they had a shared perspective in that, the owners and the players have a shared stake in this thing. And if they can't figure out how to get along long enough for us to actually have a season, then we're not going to have one. And it's going to be up to both sides for them to figure this out.
So I don't understand. Well, I do understand. The reason why, just disclaimer, is that the owners have a stronger public relations apparatus to turn the public against the players because the players have Tony Clark as the head of the MLBPA. So they're not doing too well on the PR front. But I don't understand why fans are so easily strong-armed and persuaded by the owners, PR apparatus. Why would owners, I'm not saying that both sides are completely unblameable, but why would fans naturally side with the billionaires that you pay to watch a game as opposed to the millionaires who are paid to play? Like if you want to play the cards, you're grown men playing a game for millions of dollars. Okay, well, you also have to concede that you're taking the side of billionaires who are equally trying to take the game away for equally selfish reasons. Although the difference being there are many players who are not millionaires. A majority of the players under the MLBPA's purview are not millionaires, and the entirety of the owners are billionaires.
Yeah, well, that is absolutely a great perspective. I think you're talking about 30 owners versus 600 players. So that's part of the perspective. The other perspective is not every entity that is a Major League Baseball team is owned by a single person. That's no argument against what you've just said. And that's the reason why I engaged you in the argument on Twitter is, I'm always for the players. I mean, I'm a player kind of guy. Ted Turner taught me that when I was a kid. Like the players is what matters. The rest of it just kind of comes together as it will. But in this circumstance that we're dealing with right now, where we're trying to figure out how we're going to go back and we're going to play however many games we're going to play, and we're supposed to have been playing, almost 2 months ago at this point. Everybody should be about, 55 games in. It's pretty easy to point fingers at billionaires, and it's very easy to point fingers at millionaires. But if these two groups of people can't figure out how to coincide, we're not going to get any baseball. And I want baseball.
Mm-hmm. So I agree totally. But I think it's important, and this is true of both sides. The desperation to play baseball can't paint you into a corner to where you make a bad deal that has repercussions far into the next decade. I mean, so let's look at it from both sides. And this is the points that I had said on Twitter. So there is a binding agreement with the CBA that once it's done, it's done. And there's already an agreement in place for 2020, regardless of hellfire, brimstone, whatever, high water, low water. But the players, upon the request of the owners, did come to the table, and they agreed to a 50% prorated salary cut. They didn't have to do that. And I'm going to get to the other side of that in a minute. But they didn't have to do that. They took a 50% pay cut. By the way, that's not just the millionaires. That's also the guys who are making the league minimum. And granted, I know that you make a lot as a player. You spend a lot, too. That's the way it is. I hit a button in this damn car. Turn the hazard lights on. But anyway, so they already came to the table. They opened up the collective bargaining agreement when they didn't have to. Well, the virus situation gets worse, and the owners say, well, we're going to need a little bit more. Cool. I'm okay with that. I'm cool with saying, come to the table. We can talk about it. Players are under no obligation to do anything more than talk about it. They're not even obligated to talk about it. And if the owners want to shut it down, that's fine too, because the players are going to get their cut. But the thing is, if things are good, and if things are prosperous, and this is the other part of it, and then I'll let you go. But things are bad, and the owners say, well, because things are so bad, we need more help from you to make this happen. Well, when things are really good, and this is the point that I made to you, when things are really good, the players aren't entitled to get anything back from the owners. And I shared the graph, and the graph pretty much ended the debate about how revenues and profits have literally skyrocketed, and salaries have stayed the same. And the players did say, hey, this ain't going to fly, and we're going to fix this in the next CBA. They tried. They tried to open it back up, and the owners said no. No, we have a CBA, and it's set in stone. So why would the players, if we're so desperate to get baseball back, be under any obligation to reopen this CBA when owners wouldn't do the same for them in times of prosperity?
I didn't really disagree with your perspective on that. The only thing I would say is that, having listened to a lot of people that have, baseball contacts that you and I may not have said that,
I don't have them at all. I'm just a fan.
Well, the CBA that was supposed to be, germane to 2020 has always been open to discussion. That's what local sports would lead you to believe. You don't have to believe it. I don't have to believe it, but it was never written in stone. It's not a legal document. They were always said, we're probably going to have to talk about this again. And so to stab a stake in the ground on whatever they said they were going to do in March is probably not a good idea. The other thing that I would add to this is the NFL is already moving towards reducing their salary cap, which it's the most socialist league that we have, which is why it's the most competitive, because you can't go outside of the salary cap. You can only get punished for going under the salary cap for a period of time. They've already said they're going to
the MLB's luxury tax is way tougher than any salary cap.
I mean,
go look at the other graph that I showed you. The difference between small markets and big markets.
It's not all that different than what the NBA is doing. You know, it still punishes teams that are in small markets. That's just the way it works. The fact that Miami won any championship at all is amazing. Tampa Bay Lightning. Yeah, they won 2. Tampa Bay Lightning won a championship. Those are extremely small markets compared to Boston, New York, and L.A. Kansas City. They don't even have a team anymore. Do they even have 25 baseball players they can put on a field? They won a championship and they don't even have a team anymore. It's different. But what I'm saying is, if we're comparing these things to other things that we're aware of, the NFL is talking about moving their salary cap from $202 million down to $150. I mean, you should be sweating in your boots, Matt, because the Saints are $65 million over what the cap was supposed to be. If it's $50 million less than that, y'all got a problem.
The Saints are about to go through a very prolonged drought, and I've already made my peace with that. I just need them to have, one more shot at it here. I think they've got one, maybe 2 more seasons, depending on how, the whole Breeze thing shakes out. That's a lot of dead money. And as soon as Breeze walks away, that dead money's hanging on. It ain't going nowhere. It's a cancer. That dead money is a cancer. So I'm with you, and I recognize what the NFL is doing. And certainly the, MLB's major markets teams, they probably could stand to pay a little bit more in the luxury tax. I mean, if you look at the Yankees, they went over multiple times in a row. Dodgers have gone over multiple times in a row.
Yankees' payroll is $245 million.
Yeah, but they also spent a year under it too, and that resets the luxury tax as well. But the thing that I think does work, and no one gives them enough credit for it, is you got 2 things. One, people forget this. The St. Louis Cardinals are a small market. Doesn't seem to hurt them. And the reason they're able to operate the way they do is they receive money from the 16 designated major market teams, and every year they get a free second-round draft pick just for funsies. Just because.
That's true. That's true.
That's true. And then right. So they get at the expense of every single good team. That's where the compensation picks come from. They're getting paid hard cash, and they're getting paid a compensation draft pick, which is a player they get under arbitration until that contract runs out. That's value. I know that's not hard cash, but it might as well be. We've seen so many times teams get hampered by bad contracts. Hell, the Cubs have one right now, and Hayward, and at this point of his career, John Lester. And so, even though we talk about big teams are still hampered by money too. And the Cubs, they can't spend. They're done. That's why the past 2 off seasons have been terrible. And then they lost the wild card game. Then they missed the playoffs because they are up against what is very much a real salary cap. It's not a cap in literal terms, but it is in every other term because they haven't spent money in the past 2 years because of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously we dealt with that in Atlanta with B.J. Upton and Dan Ugla, trying to figure out how to get rid of those
Ugla
guys.
had way more value than anyone appreciated him for, by the way.
Ugla had way more arms than anybody even knew. He was a big old boy.
He had a whole Twitter account dedicated to it.
Oh, I loved it. That was but
no, he should have been a DH. Just get him out of the damn field.
Yeah. That's true as true gets.
Yeah, but he struck out so much too. Like, I don't know that he would have been that much value. He wasn't Jim Thome. He wouldn't have made it as a career DH because he struck out too much. It's interesting. So, all right. So let's move on to that since we're in, after dark, and we're not having to put this on the iTunes. I know you're super excited for the concept that MLB is talking about universal DH, whether it's just for this year or maybe it's permanent. We had a Braves beat writer for The Athletic on last week, and he was saying that the Braves were in a very good position to deal with the concept of having a DH. And I just tell us what your perspective is. I know you don't like pitchers hitting.
No, I don't. So there's a lot of ways of looking at this. So first of all, if the universal DH were to happen this year, it would be permanent because once you put the pace out of the tube, there's no putting it back, right? And that's why I'm so sensitive to whatever concessions are made by either side out of desperation just to have baseball played this year, because once you agree to something, it's hard to get it back. It takes decades to get something back that you conceded in a time of desperation, and that's why the players are so desperate to get theirs. So, the owners primarily of the National League are not pro DH, and one of the reasons why they're not pro DH is that means that's another high salary position that they otherwise don't have to have. That's a position you literally don't need to have. You play a couple of AL games a year and you just plug in a bench guy, but that's a guy that you already had under payroll, and that's not a designated spot on your payroll. And so that's challenging, right? Because that's the concession the owner is going to have to give up. And that's going to be part of this other overall conversation too about money and what goes into the CBA. Because if you want a DH, if you want the Players Association to get their way, they're going to have to create 15 new jobs. All right, well, what are the owners going to get? You already want the owners to pay minor leaguers too, and I'm very much pro minor leaguers. I think minor leaguers need to be paid a livable wage, and they're not. So the players are going to have to give up something. I don't know necessarily what that is, especially too, and it goes back to that graph that I showed. Even if you make the owners give up a little bit, that just levels the playing field. That brings you back to where you were 5 years ago. So I still think the owners have more to give up than the players. So that's the financial aspect of the DH. Now, purely from a competition standpoint, I am over watching pitchers hit. I am a baseball traditionalist. It pains me to be such an advocate of the DH. Honest to God, it does. Especially, too, if you think about me as a Cub fan, traditionally, and you guys are Braves fans, so I think I know why you guys are so anti-DH, because you have been blessed with having a lot of really good hitting pitchers. So you've seen the best of that model. And the Cubs haven't been too shabby either, at least in my adult years, because going back to the Wood in prior years, Wood could swing. Wood could swing big time. And Zambrano, Carlos Zambrano might be one of the best hitting pitchers of all time. That guy could go and be a hitter. If he had trained to it, he could be a hitter. Jake Arrieta, when he was with the Cubs, he was a really good hitter.
Yeah, I mean, and
Maddox,
not just like hitting, but like situational hitting. Like Maddox and Glavine were great bunters. Glavine was a great hitter. Smoltz could put one over the fence.
Glavine was a great bunter
twice
too.
A year.
Like he was strategic.
Hampton hit more home runs than any pitcher since Babe Ruth.
We used to call Hampton Slugger.
Yeah, I mean,
Hammer and Hampton.
Yeah.
And we only had him for 3 years or so. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I think the issue is, so if I can go back to what you said about like how you fill a lineup up and how you fill up a salary card, what you're talking about is you're putting a DH on the bench who's he's gonna hit, but to put that guy there, that means that you remove a utility infielder or you remove a reliever. And those people, if they're any good at what they do, are not inexpensive either. So I don't know that cost is necessarily what comes into play, because nobody can hire Jim Thome tomorrow. He's retired and he's in the Hall of Fame.
Well, it's a trade-off, and let me remind you why. So you would add a DH. Let's assume this goes into play. You're adding the DH, which is a high-paid type player. It's essentially going to replace a reliever. And the reason I think it would replace a reliever is a rule that I also hate, the 3-batter minimum for the reliever. You're no longer going to need that situational lefty. And so I think on the roster, the DH would then replace the situational loogie lefty guy, because you no longer need the situational lefty when a reliever now has to face 3 batters minimum or 3 outs.
Ooh, that's a good call, actually. I like that.
Because remember, that rule is new for this year.
Yeah.
And we forget that because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it yet.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. That may change my entire perspective on this whole process.
Sherwin, real quick, let me jump in. I got to get rolling. I'm going to end the stream here, so let's say bye to the PETM posse. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see y'all soon.